Bronnie Ware, welcome to the podcast, my love.
I am so stoked to be here, Erica. I really am. I wish I could be
Oh,
so excited about every single interview I do, but yours is extra special.
we love each other. That's why anybody listening here, we are dear friends. I met gorgeous Bronnie recently at a conference that we attended, and it was so funny because the universe sat me right next to you. And you were so lovely and had really calm, nice energy. And I'm like, I need this because I'm so hyper right now. And then hearing about you and knowing who you were, and I'm like, oh my God, I read your book and I love you and you're her. And it was this kind of full circle fangirl, but realistic fangirl moment of being with you, meeting you, having read your book and heard about you, and then watching you on stage. I was just like, oh my God, I'm in awe of this woman. So thank you for being here,
Oh,
my
look,
love.
I felt the same warmth straight away. I remember just looking at you and all in your denim with your funky shoes. And I said, oh, I love you. Look at you. I love all of you. And I often think back to a quote that I don't know who said it, but I actually say it to my daughter sometimes as well, that your friends know you more in the moment they meet you than your acquaintances will know you in a lifetime.
Oh,
And that was how I felt. Like I just felt,
mm.
oh, I'm totally at home here with this sister.
Oh,
Yeah.
I love you. It was, what was it? It was the cheetah print boots. That's what it
Yeah.
was. We love at first sight.
Yeah.
So you have had an incredible, amazing life, career, business that you've built. You've got a beautiful daughter, a single mama.
Yeah.
You've just done so much in your lifetime. Let us know, for those listening, just tuning in, getting to know your world, what brought you to what you do now, and the work that you're doing in the world.
I think the pain of doing the wrong jobs brought me to where I am now. I got a job in banking. I went into a bank in my local town, and 2 weeks before I finished school, and said I want to move to Sydney, get out of the country town, and scored a job down in Sydney, and ended up on this pathway of quite an accelerated banking career because I was really restless and I moved around a lot. I worked for all different sorts of banks, and I was nomadic, and I'd move to a different town, uh, and then I'd just go into each bank and say, have you got any jobs? And they'd say, well, we've got this job. And I'd say, yeah, I haven't really done that, but I've done this. I could do that. And so I ended up as a bank manager at a really young age. And
Wow.
yeah, but I hated it. I loved customer service. I loved the mathematics side of it. I love numbers, but I didn't love banking was changing, where you had to sell insurance to every single person that came in, or sell them superannuation. I just didn't want to do that. And so I did a number of other jobs, and then one day I was sitting by the Swan River in Perth. I was living over there by then, and I had Shakti Gawain's book that said a creative visualization. And it said, make a list of 5 things you're good at and 5 things you love. And the only 2 things that fell into both were counting money and
I love
and
that.
and I knew that wasn't making me happy in my career. And the other one was photography and writing. And I just sort of thought, dare I be one of those creative people? Like, I was on the corporate path, and I never saw myself as creative, even though my
Oh,
mother was a singer, my father was a guitarist when they met. My father was also a radio announcer, but then he was also an accountant, and my mother was a dietitian. And so we had this creative side, but it was never as the main job. And
wow.
so I just started on my path then, and really tried to get going creatively. And in the frustration of trying to make a living that way, took on a live-in job as a carer, and ended up in palliative care for 8 years. I just wanted a job that, this is what I put out, the order I put out. I want to be myself, no high heels, no stockings, no corporate uniform. That was
Yeah.
all I needed. And I ended up in palliative care. And so
Wow.
from that, I looked after dying people for 8 years. And then I wanted to work where there was some hope. And so, with no qualifications and no idea what I was doing, I managed to set up a songwriting program in a women's jail. And I taught songwriting in a women's jail for a year after that. And then I burnt out really, really
Yeah.
big time. And during the time with palliative in the prison, I started a blog, and just kept blogging away. And once I burnt out, and I went through a really hard period of depression and got really close to killing myself. As I was coming out of that and just said to life, okay, I'm bored, I'm sick of being sad, I've done so much work on myself, but I need to move forward, and I've done everything I can. That's when a blog that I'd written 6 months earlier took off about the regrets dying people had shared with me. And that led to a book deal, which got rejected 25 times, which then led me to putting it out independently. And then about 4 or 5 months later, from when it first got rejected, about a year and a bit later, but 4 months after the independent release of the top 5 regrets of the dying came out, while I was in labour, my book took off.
Yeah.
I was becoming a first-time mum at 45. Really blessed to conceive naturally and quickly. But I had left the relationship when I was pregnant. So so here I was, a single mum, about to become a mum for the first time at 45, and I'm doing interviews from my hospital bed, and just sent out a really strong prayer and said, or it was more of a demand really, and just said, send me help now. It had taken 14 years to become an overnight success, like 14 years from when I started. When I made that list on by the Swan River, I'd started trying to sell my photography and inspirational quotes. This is all before the internet. And I'd sort of jumped that bit. I'd spent a few years trying to get an inspirational book published. Yeah. And that led to picking up the guitar, writing songs, which led on and on. And so no steps were wasted, but I was ready to quit. 14 years of really focused commitment to try and get going in the creative field as a self-employed person. And within 24 hours of my daughter being born, my dream publishing house, Hay House, rang up and offered me an international publishing contract. And 5 Regrets became and still is their fastest foreign rights seller in Hay House history. And went into 32 languages within about 6 months. It's like, oh, cool.
Millions of copies all over the world.
Yes, yeah. Wow. So here I am. Yeah, and that just sort of put me on a much healthier path to be able to work from home and be an author and not be dragging a guitar to gigs at 10 o'clock at night as an introvert, playing in pubs where the drunks are just watching the boxing on the wall, and turning around, checking out, the chick on stage every now and then. Thank goodness those days are behind me. Yeah,
it's such a fascinating, like, we could do 75 podcast episodes on all of that. The listeners are like, oh my gosh. And this is the thing that when I met you, I felt like this beautiful calmness about you. And you are, like you said, you're an introvert, you're very chilled, you live a beautifully chilled life with your daughter, and you're not, it's just really lovely to see that. And then when you read your books and read your blogs and hear your stories, you're like, wow, like, oh my goodness, all the questions, what do you feel when you were in that mode, when you were like, because you're about to have a baby, or having a baby, actually, you're birthing 2 babies at once.
Yes.
And, the whole thing about being a mom and doing that as a single mother, like, again, honor you, all of single mothers out there. My mom was a single mother, and I was so in awe of her. I remember saying to her when I was 7 years old, like, Mom, I hope that I have a daughter and it's just me and her. And she's like, no, you don't want that. I'm like, no, I want that. Like, this is so fun. Like, this is awesome. So high five to you single mamas out there listening to this. But how did you feel coming into this new world of motherhood, which is its own journey, and then about to birth your book with your dream publishing house? How did you navigate that whole experience?
Oh, it was pretty intense because I also got rheumatoid arthritis at the same time.
Wow.
Yeah, so there was a bit going on.
All 3 at once.
I felt grateful that I had a publisher now, because I just forwarded all the emails to them and they just looked after so much for me, and I'd been doing it on my own for a long time. So I felt grateful, but I think more than anything, I was just in survival mode, and grateful that I'd had a healthy baby, even though it was a bit much for my body and I was going through some pretty big learning there. I just tried to stay in gratitude, and I really just had to surrender into it all, because it was so far out of my control what was happening, that all I could do was get through one day at a time. And when you are that present, you can't help but be grateful, even if your hands are on fire or whatever else. You can sort of find, when you're fully present, you notice that it's a beautiful day. You notice that the sun's shining. You notice that, you know, your baby is a miracle and everything else. And it was pretty intense, you know, that first year, particularly when about a year into it, my publisher said, "How are you getting on with your next book?" And I was like, what next book? You know, that was pretty tricky. But at the same time, with that success, I was able to buy a house, and I'd been very nomadic and restless, and having a baby to provide for meant that I had to just get very grounded, and it just brought out, it really did birth that mother in me and the caretaker for my daughter. And in doing so, it also helped me see my own potential, because I had to rise, and I want, or not just had to, I wanted to. I wanted to be, it was just an instinctive thing. Okay, I've got to provide a house now. We need to have a bit of settled life and everything else. And the fact that I rose to that still blows me away. Even this morning I said to Eleanor, she's 9 now, and I said to her, you know, I wake up every morning and it's just a white ceiling above the bed, but I just think, I can't believe I'm doing this, that we have this sweet little house, that I'm supporting us in this amazing life we've got, and that I'm not doing it with a partner, that it's just me as one woman, and I have done all this. And I said, I just feel so grateful. And then I'd turn it to her always and say, and that you turned out so incredible, that you're so much more special than I ever imagined a child could be. And I wake up every day and I just think, I cannot believe I've pulled this off. And so I think it's taken me a long time to get to that point where I could actually own it.
Yeah.
And that's really coming into me now. So yeah, it's been a bit of a ride.
Yeah, what a journey. I'm thinking like Bronnie as a banker, as a bank manager, and then what in that time when you were there, obviously the universe just hooks us up, doesn't it? Takes us on this roller coaster and puts the paths and the people. But going from that to, what was your lesson there? Going from there thinking, I'm going to make it, I'm going to do this thing, I'm going to hustle, I'm going to work and go to the top, and then realizing that's not what I want, and moving into this space of creativity and honoring that, as you say, that your family had both sides, which I think is so cool, because you obviously do as well. How was that transition? Was there anything there that happened or that went, my aha moment to shift?
Well, yeah, I went, and my sister and I went and did a scuba diving course on Fitzroy Island in North Queensland.
Oh, nice.
And while she was off bonking the diving instructor, which helped us pass our tests very well.
Thank you, sister.
I did a big walk up to the top of the mountain, and I was sitting up there and I thought, I want to live on an island. Wow. And so I left banking by going and living on Dunk Island as a dishwasher initially, and then I trained in the bar mixing cocktails. So I lived on a tropical island for 2 years, and that helped me extract myself from the 9-to-5 corporate life and to realize, okay, there's a different life here that's possible. Which is, you know, then I went to England and worked in pubs and stuff, and that led to me living as a carer for someone. So it was all aligned. But I feel very, very grateful for the banking time, because I don't think I'm the best author out there. In fact, I know I'm not. But I've got my head together with my books. And I really think that is a bit of a downfall for a lot of very talented creative people, that some of them never play their songs outside of their lounge room because they can't get their act together with the business side of it. And I still have my weaknesses in certain aspects of business, and that's why I hire other people for those areas where I'm not strong. But a lot of areas I'm very strong in business. And so I think just having that mind that understands systems and numbers so clearly has helped me enormously in actually being successful, because it means I'm very organized in my business. I'm very efficient in how I run it. I also don't overcomplicate it. I don't take on systems unless I really need them. And there's been times I've grown and I've got new systems in place, only to realize I actually just liked the simpler original system, and I've gone back to that mailing provider, or I've gone back to that back end system.
Yeah.
And I think that those 15 years that I worked in banking, I think they played a really important role in that, in helping me discern from what works for me compared to what other people think I should be doing or what other people are doing.
And that's a massive lesson. And I love that, because I feel like when I read your book, The Top 5 Regrets, one of them was like not caring so much what anyone thinks about you, and really guiding your own life. And it sounds like maybe you've always had an inner knowing or an intuition that when you were on that mountain, you're like, yep, I'm going to go. Cause like going from banking to like, I'm going to wash dishes. Like a lot of people like, how did you make that flip? Like that's a big shift and change, and ego hit almost for some people. But did you feel like maybe you always had this like inner guiding intuition that you listened to, or you started to tap into?
It's always been there, but I think in the early days, it absolutely guides me now, but in the early days, I think the only time I really honored it was by knowing what I didn't want, not what I did want.
Yeah.
And so I knew that I didn't want to work Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. I used to see people come into the bank and they weren't in work clothes. And I think, what do they do? How are they? They've got money in their bank. I could see their bank account. They've got money in the bank, but they're out today and it's sunny and they're not under fluorescent lights with no windows. Like, how are they doing it? So I'd already started working out what I didn't want. And I just sold up all my stuff or put some in a storage in my father's shed on the farm. And I just wrote to 2 islands, the one I'd been on and another one that looked like a good location. That's the one I ended up on, and said, I'll do anything.
Wow.
I'm free. I'm on my way. I'll do anything. And it was before the internet. And I caught the train. I started and took a couple of days out near Rockhampton and went over there to Great Keppel and had a look there, and rang my mum from the phone box, and she said, oh, Dunk Island have got in touch. They want you to ring them. They've got a job for you. It's like, oh, cool. Okay, that's where I'm going. All right.
Oh my God.
I was already manifesting. On my way. Yeah.
I'll be there in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Wow. So you've built an incredible business. I love that you touch on, knowing your numbers and knowing how to be savvy in business. And when we met, we were just like, talking all the things business. And it was so amazing. And it still is amazing to watch you as a mentor and as someone who I see as a big leader in the space of, owning your business, like killing it with your book, getting it out there, reaching as many people as possible, and living simply. Cause we talk about this offline a lot. We have small house, little, no things, I'm not about Gucci, and no offense. If you like Gucci, go ahead and do it. But it's really simplifying things. And you've done that so masterfully. What do you feel like, when you look out into the world and you see, I work with a lot of women, and women listen to this podcast, women and money, like the issue that we have with creating or understanding numbers or avoiding that kind of stuff.
Okay. I just want to give you a bit of credit here. In that first conversation, I was pumping you with a lot of questions. So you're actually speaking and building me up, but I was actually pumping you with loads of questions. So listeners, take that on. Okay, women and money, we need to face it. Absolutely, we need to face it. The way I see it, and this is how I healed my money story, is that I see money as a feminine energy that wants to dance with us.
Oh, love that.
Yeah. And as a friend that wants to be there. And so I try really hard not to dictate to money how it should show up, but just to appreciate its presence in my life and its trust in me. So when I first had success with 5 Regrets, I'd never had money before, and I blew a lot of it. And I blew a lot of it on very comfortable travel, and I don't regret that, especially now that we can't even leave the country. I did a lot of work trips that probably didn't need to be done as in-person trips to Europe and whatever, but I did it anyway. And like I say, I don't regret it whatsoever. But I also lent people money. I gave money away to friends. And I'm not talking loads because I wasn't that cashed up. But, a friend was whinging that he couldn't afford a new microphone, and he'd been really kind to me in my singer-songwriter days. So I gave him $1,000 for a microphone.
Yeah.
And another friend was trying to buy a car. So I offered her money in exchange for weekly massages. She paid it off through weekly massages to me. So that, that was a self-care commitment as well.
Yeah.
But the things I was doing weren't actually kind to me and Eleanor. They weren't putting things in place for our future. They were looking after everyone else instead of us. And then I actually went through a bit of a dry spell because I only get paid every 6 months. And so I had some really big learning to do before I actually got it flowing in again to me. And when it flowed in again, I treated it with so much more respect and appreciation and love. And that's when it sort of trusted me again and said, okay, I'll come back into your world. But I think as women, whether it's conscious or not, there is often that thing that a guy will save you.
Yeah.
And even the most conscious, someone who's doing personal growth big time and everything else, you still have to acknowledge that was the culture. And at some point, you're going to have to unpack that. Yeah. And so for me, I'm really blessed because my daughter's father hasn't contributed financially. I've never asked him to either, because when he didn't, I just thought, okay, I'll just get on with it. So I've had to provide for us, which sort of puts me in the masculine and the feminine all the time. But it's also made me really get my act together in a very healthy way, not only to provide for my daughter, but to set up my own future and to make sure we live a very comfortable, enjoyable life. And even, yesterday when I left that message for you, we were out having an ice cream because you can't get out of your car and go anywhere. But thankfully in lockdown here, ice creams are essential. So ice cream shops are open. Work that one out. Can't get your hair cut, but you can get an ice cream.
And you can go to a brothel, okay? So ice cream and brothels, apparently.
Exactly. So Eleanor had insisted on shouting the ice creams. And so I said to her, thank you for this. I said, it's really good that you get to know that money is for not just for things, but for experiences too. I said, so here we are, we're sitting in the car looking at the ocean, we're eating ice cream. This is an experience that money has brought us thanks to your generosity, and, because she wanted to pay. She just insisted on paying. And this is pretty cute for a 9-year-old.
Pretty beautiful. And what a great lesson that you gave her.
Yeah. So I think, the main thing is to trust that money is an energy and it's on our side and it actually wants to be celebrated and enjoyed, but it wants to be respected as well. And so by denying it and not actually bringing your consciousness to your figures, to your numbers and everything else, and not really just keeping your head in the sand a little bit, is not only disrespectful to the money that wants to flow to you, but it's not kindness to yourself. Because money wants to flow to you so you can have an easier life. And we've got to have money. It's a currency, an energy currency. So I think if you can look at it from a point of respect of money and of self-kindness to yourself, then you actually say, okay, I'm going to bring a bit more awareness to my finances now.
Oh my gosh, I think people are going to rewind that part of this podcast because so many of us have an issue with this. And I remember speaking to women in my mastermind about it, and they just don't want to look at it. Some of them are just like, I don't know my numbers. I don't know. And it's like this cute thing. And it's like, it's not cute, ladies. Like, let's not wait for anyone to come save us, whether it's a financial planner or your man or your partner or your dad. It's really a responsibility, as you say, that we all have. And what we're able to create. I mean, you're giving your daughter a role model. You're giving her an experience. Like, imagine learning that lesson as a 9-year-old to anybody listening. Like, your generosity is going to buy an experience. Like, what? Like, you saved it. You chose consciously how to spend it. And now you're creating a memory with your family member from it. Like, that is a deep lesson as a 9-year-old.
Yes. Yeah. Wow. And I think also for people to remember that we grow into it. It's, you know, there was a quote by Josie Bissett that I read in 1996, and it always stayed with me. And it's that dreams come a size too big so we can grow into them.
Oh, I
And
love that.
which I love. Yeah. And so even with our money story, we grow into it. So get to know this part of your business first. And you don't need to know it all in the first month. Like, just bring awareness and mindfulness to it and open your mind and your heart to mastering this one step at a time. You don't need to know it all right now, which is what may scare a lot of people off, that there's too much to learn. So you just start learning. And then as you master each step of that money journey, you make your mistakes. I've made mine. We've all made them. Yeah. And then you just learn by that and get on with it. And you don't need to know it all, but you do need to bring your mindfulness to it.
Yeah. It feels like every step of personal development, you know, and so many people listening to this podcast love personal development. And it's like, you can't work on something that you have no awareness of. So, you know, I guess for you, and you've talked about hiring people when you're not great in certain areas, or, you know, being good at what you're good at, and hiring out those that you're not. And I think with this specific topic is a great place to go, hey, I'm going to get myself here, but now the next step, I might need some support for that.
Yeah. And also, if you're going to grow, you have to get support at some stage.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm a smart, intelligent woman. I'm a capable woman. I can do it all.
Yeah.
But a lot of it will take me a lot of time that I could be doing on things that bring me joy. And a lot of it won't be done as well as someone else could do it, also known as Facebook ads.
Yeah. High five. They're so convoluted. God.
Yeah. So we do need help. We need to build our team. And it can start with just outsourcing 2 hours a week for this area, or whatever it takes, until you're in that position where you can take on a proper assistant or whatever. But yeah, I think that was probably one of my biggest mistakes for a long time, in trying to do it all myself. And then I took on a VA for a year. I've had one VA who's worked with me for a long time, but then I took on a PA for about a year. I was supposed to be long-term, but she had a personal problem with someone I knew, and we couldn't find a peaceful solution, and she quit. And so when I replaced her, I took on an amazing woman, and I gave her as much responsibility as she wanted, and she just ran with it. She was just a dream assistant. But then she had a personal crisis of her own and couldn't work for me, and offered to train someone else up. And I said no. And I had to, then I realized I didn't know some aspects of my business, because I had given her so much responsibility that I didn't know how to operate one of the programs we were using.
Yeah.
And so from that, I just cut the business right back to basics again. And then I grew it with a lot more mindfulness, instead of growing too fast, too soon, doing it in a way, okay, I've tried that way, I've handed it all over. I'm actually better at this than she was. She's better at me at this than I was. And then working out, where are my strengths? Where are my joys? What do I actually want to focus on?
Yeah.
And what can I outsource, even though they're things I could do?
Oh, I love this. This is such a great and important topic, because I think you're right. We get really excited. And when we all start in our business, we're like the one woman band, you know, we're playing the music, we're singing, we're mixing at the back, we're pumping the crowd, you know, like
swinging the hips,
exhausting yourself. You're like, I'm also the dancer, and I'm also going to serve you food on the intermission. You know, it's like, there's so much happening. Yes. And I know for us, we did the same thing, Bron. We had one of our team members doing everything. And then I felt bad that I was doing it to her, because it was like this burnout that we're all experiencing. And similarly, we had someone who we paid a lot of money, Australian dollars to, who was looking after something that I had no idea about. And I actually was like, that's too hard. I have no idea. She knows better. And it wasn't too hard, and she didn't know better, and she was putting out fires with me, and I was starting fires and she was just putting them out. And that's not a great way to run your business, you know? It's fun, you know, starting fires. And I think she was caught up in our flame, you know, it was like, yeah, but really expensive lessons. And I think that, again, it's beautiful to share these mistakes, because I think when you're hiring someone and starting to build your team and build your big vision and your company, it's such a major problem to, again, feel like you lack in an area. And instead of learning what the lack is, you just kind of pay someone else and almost like numb out and don't worry about it until it comes back and hits you.
Yeah, and even though it's your business, you sort of hand over the responsibility in a way,
Yeah.
because you want to trust the person you're paying and everything else. Um, but they're human and they're under your guidance. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And if we
there's
don't know,
no.
we're blind. Yeah, it's true. 100%. It's such a big thing. And I think to anyone who's tuning into this and thinking about this, maybe you're in the beginning of your business and you're not ready for a team member, but as you're saying, Bron, it's good to know what it is that you need. What do you love doing? What are you great at and what are you not so great at that you can kind of hand over to someone else who can
Yes,
support
yeah,
you?
even in small doses to start with.
Yeah.
And what I've also learned through my plenty of mistakes is that the things that I love the most are the things that actually make me the most money.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I want to spend all my time doing stuff that doesn't make me as much money, it's taken me away from not only my joy of creating, because I'd much rather, I'm at my best when I'm creating. Um, and that's so my books make me more money than lots of other things. I was doing mentoring, but I didn't want to. I don't feel like I can't do what you do, and you do it so brilliantly. Like you lead and you hold that space for women, and you lead them all the way through. That's not who I am. I
Yeah.
want to create, and I want to say, this is how I live my life. This is how I do it. If you want to do it the same way, I reckon it'll help you, but I can't hold your hand doing that
Yeah.
because I actually want to go off and create something else now.
Yeah.
And
I
so
love
it
it.
took me a long time to learn that. And I was doing mentoring, I was having a lot of success with it. I also opened a membership when my publisher asked me to. They sort of were encouraging all their authors, they've got a very abundant mindset. And so they were sort of like, do courses, do memberships. We want our authors to thrive through all different income streams. And I did a membership and it was beautiful. Like I had a beautiful connection with my participants, my members. But oh my goodness, it was such a weight of responsibility that just didn't light me up. And when I closed that and just created an online course that is there for anyone anytime they want it, the course was a breeze to create because I already knew all the content. And it's basically saying these are the tools I use to live a life that's going to be free of regret. But, this is how I do it. And so if people do the course and it helps them, I'm stoked. And it does help them. It helps a lot of people and it's a nice feeling. But what lights me up the most and what makes me the most money is writing books or doing stuff that is honoring my creativity. And so like right now I'm back to being a beginner because I'm writing my first fiction book. And I've never written a novel. I've never learned how to write. I've published 3 successful books, but with fiction, everyone's trying to tell me there's all these rules, and as a rule follower, it's like, I'm not a rule follower. But I think that's the thing to tune into is, okay, are you honoring where your joy is, or are you following a path that you think you should do? And I've done both. And I know the difference in the long run in terms of my inner peace and my happiness, but also in terms of the money that comes back to you. Yeah.
And I love that when I met you, one of the biggest things when we were chatting was your boundaries. Like you have really good boundaries now. And maybe back in the day you didn't. And anybody listening to this who's like, I suck at boundaries, it's a muscle that we build through our mistakes that we make and through our experiences. But I take my crown off to you because you're really great at that. And your genius zone and what you love and where you want to be. And not so much just for your daughter, but for yourself so that you can flourish and you can rest when you need to. And where do you feel, or do you feel like you developed this boundary? Was there someone who helped you, or was this something that you just learned along through the mistakes?
I think it's one of the blessings of living with disease. It taught me. It has taught me self-kindness on a level that nothing else could have.
Wow.
And boundaries are a part of self-kindness, that I deserve my love just as much as everyone else deserves my love. that I'm just as worthy as everyone else. And also being so sick as I was, I still live with disease, but it's managed a lot better than it was in those first few years. Holy dooly. Yeah. But it taught me presence, and I don't want to miss a bit of sunshine in the day. And if it's an especially nice day, I want to be able to have that flexibility to go outside and enjoy it, or get on my bike and go for a ride or something. Yeah. So one of the big lessons, there was that with the disease. The other thing was that when I was trying to get going as a singer-songwriter, I'd apply for festivals to play at festivals and stuff. And I did eventually get into some small folk festivals, but I wasn't a very confident performer, not like I am as a speaker now. I was a different person then, and a lot shyer, and didn't want to really be there. I had a message to share. I loved that, but anyway. Yeah. But I didn't hear back from a lot of places. And in the old days with me, when you used to apply for a job, you always heard back and stuff like that. So when I applied to get into festivals, I often didn't hear back. So I made this deal with myself that if I ever became successful, I would always be kind enough to reply to people who had written to me. And that was a really lovely intention. But as success grew, it just became ridiculous. Impossible. And so I was paying my assistant to reply to people, just answering all their questions. And what it was actually doing was taking money. I was paying her when it could have been money for Eleanor and I, for my daughter and I. And so I was paying her to be kind to everyone else, but it wasn't actually kind to myself, I realized. So what I ended up doing was writing a really clear, frequently asked questions page. And our emails dropped 80%. 80%. Which just shows how much time we were spending.
That's great.
On being kind to other people at the sacrifice of my own kindness to myself. And so those two things, like realizing, okay, I'm spending way too much time and money on paying someone else to reply to these questions, and and it's not kind to myself to do that. And then also having limitations with the disease and wanting to keep my energy in a good place. And so, my frequently asked questions page answers a lot of questions without
it really does.
having.
It's a great hack that you share. So thank you for thank you for sharing that, because if you haven't checked it out, obviously her info is going to be in the show notes, but it's true. When you start looking at the other side of the things that cause us burnout, you start automating, and I love that you're also saying, and to anybody listening to this, I always say, like, I try to answer all my DMs, and my other friends who are coaches and influencers are like, Erica, you're not going to get to everyone. And I'm like, well, I want to, because I got a good heart and I love talking to people. But the reality is, maybe like 6 months ago, I just started scrolling through and I'm like, shit, I can't freaking answer any of these people. And it used to really bother me and like give me a stomach ache and make me mean all kinds of things that I'm mean and I don't care, And then I just finally, I'm like, I just can't, and that's okay. Like I want to, and I want people to know that I want to, and that's enough. And I don't have to, because it actually, you're right. It isn't kind to yourself. It isn't realistic. Look at Oprah. She never replies to a DM, and you can say she's mean, or she's out there changing the world. And there's a lot of stuff she's doing. And that's why she can't reply to your message, And I think it's a gift to self. It really is.
Yeah. And Brene Brown apparently says a similar thing, that when she thinks, am I going to give my time to this or not? She asks, is it supporting the work, meaning the work she's here to do?
Yeah.
Is this use of my time really going to support the work, or is it going to distract me and take my time away from the work? What you're really here to do. Yeah.
And it sounds like you would have to have an inner knowing that the work you're doing, the books you're writing, the courses you've created, the content that is out in the world is going to that end result in that vision that you have set to have. And almost anything else could be a distraction or a shiny object that takes you off course. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. There's been times where I thought, I haven't really earned enough for what I could right now, and then I think, maybe I should do this or should do that. And I could do this and I could do that. And even, you know, since I've known you and we had conversations at the start, and then I actually pulled it right back and thought, no, what people want from me is stuff around the 5 regrets. And what I want to do is, you know, grow and create. So they're the things I'm going to serve the most, rather than all the things I could do. And I don't blame or judge anyone for doing stuff just to make money, because we've got to make money.
Yeah.
And I'm in a privileged position that I happen to write a book that seems to be timeless. So it gets a new sort of group, a new demographic of followers all the time. And that's a real blessing. But, you know, it was 14 years of hard work to get that blessing.
It wasn't like you're lucky you did the work.
No. Even before putting it out in the independent release, I spent 6 months researching every single independent bookstore in the world. Wow. And then when the independent release came out, I emailed them all individually so it wouldn't go to spam, to let them know of its availability. But the mob that I had published that through, it was set up so it was an overseas thing. So I'd done all that work, and the book was like a $50 book, so no one would buy it because it was not. Yeah, it was an overseas import thing. And, you know, so things like that. I had showed my commitment to life to get my message out there. I had showed, and you have to show life your commitment. So I'm certainly not judging people who are following systems that work for other people if they're not sure what else to do. But I think the thing is to check in sometimes. This is a question I ask myself all the time. And it really has helped me grow strong and confident, and also then attract money in a way that brings me joy. And that is to say, so I'm writing this novel at the moment. The other day I'm thinking, I hate this. Why did I start this process? It's so long. I just want to get on with my next idea. And, you know, books take forever, or they do with me. And, you know, And then I thought, okay, do you really hate this process because you chose to write a book because writing brings you joy? So do you hate writing, or are you just resisting? And I was resisting because I'd got to a point where I was learning something new and I was a beginner again. And I hated that feeling. I love the learning, but I hated that feeling of knowing that I've got to keep remembering this new writing skill until it becomes natural, until it becomes a habit. And so I was resisting that newness and that learning and being a beginner, but it wasn't because I actually hated it. And so there's two feelings of sometimes when you're doing something and you're not enjoying it. So what I ask myself is, am I not enjoying it just because I'm resisting the growth, or am I not enjoying it because I'm actually doing the wrong thing here? That I'm not honoring my joy. I'm not actually doing what my heart really wants me to do. And so then I can stop and check in and think, yeah, okay, I could do that, but it's not, my heart's not fully into it. And so I really just question, is it resistance or is it the wrong direction?
I love that question. That's a real good tune-in question.
You can use it.
I love it. Thank you. I love that. I'm like, everybody write that down. Unless you're driving, pull over. That's a great question. You're right, because there is things that feel crappy and we don't want to do it, like looking at our thoughts or, you know, writing a book. It does. I don't love writing a book either. So it's a pain in the ass. It's hard work. It feels like it's never going to end. And I hate sitting. I'm like, I have to take my nails off. It's all the things. Okay. These first world problems of mine, but when you do it, obviously after, it's like, of course you want to get your work out into the world, and it's amazing. But it's a beautiful question to ask yourself, and I think that anybody listening to this, you know, really tapping into that inner voice and that intuition and that truth for you. And it sounds like all the turns you took were all the right ways, even if they felt like the wrong ways, because they lead you to understanding what you have now and who you are and what you want to do. You know, it's like we don't get to this amazing point without going through the hard times or going through mistakes or doing things that we shouldn't have done in order to get to where we want to be.
Yes, exactly. I mean, it's the only way we get to know what we want is through making mistakes, and that's how we learn. And so we have to try the wrong ways a few times before we actually have the courage to go the right way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So you have spoken to some of the most amazing and incredible people around the world, beautiful mentors and amazing people who like Wayne Dyer. I'm just like, oh my God, Dr. Dyer, we love you.
Yeah.
Who would you say in your life has been someone who's impacted you or given you a great lesson that you've looked up to?
Well, my mum's pretty full of fun. Her name's
Mhm.
Joy.
Oh, wow.
There's some things about the way she's lived her life I certainly am trying to improve on, but I do love that she puts joy as a priority in
Wow.
terms of the feeling of joy in the experience. Like, she doesn't take life too seriously. She
Mm,
just, refuses to let things get her down for long and stuff. So
nice.
in terms of life direction, I'd have to say my mum, I'm really blessed by her.
Mm.
My gran was pretty strong. She was like the oldest of 11 kids, and her mum died when she
Wow.
was 13. So she
Wow.
raised the other
She was
10
like the mom.
kids and then had
Wow.
7 kids of her own. So she was pretty fierce, but also really accepting. But I think, there's a lot of amazing people out there. I think anyone who does it their own way
Yeah.
is someone I respect and look up to. But I think probably the most significant conversation I've had in recent times was with Dr. John Demartini.
Mm.
And I was so, so blessed. And he's promoted my work a lot, as Wayne Dyer did as well. And a lot of people do. And Marie Forleo as well. And I think when they actually meet me, they're a little bit surprised because I'm just like, I'm just Bronnie.
Hey,
I'm,
what's up?
yeah. I'm just like,
Yeah.
I sort of wonder if sometimes I'm not a bit of a disappointment because
No.
there was one person who promoted my work a lot, and she was really well known. And when she met me, she was so excited. And then I actually let her know that sometimes I struggle with being known in the public,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
being a famous person isn't actually a dream. It's
Mm.
actually something I navigate and I honor because life has bestowed this important message of regret-free living on me. And so I honor that. That's a deal I've done, that I'll honor it as long as life looks after me.
Yeah.
But it's not been my sort of craving thing to be that well known. And so when I let this particular person know that, I think I just went right down in her books as being like not the big Bronnie Ware on a pedestal feeling. And it's quite interesting to observe it because I've actually observed it a few times in really well-known people where they've just like, I'm going to see Bronnie Ware, and
Yeah.
then they meet me and I'm just a regular person who's not caught up in the fame and the success. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think it sort of deflates their balloon around me a little bit. And I'm all right with that because I'm
Yeah.
I'm living the life I want and I'm not going to have
Exactly.
regrets.
This is like your superpower to me. I'm like, I love that because
Yeah.
I think it's
Yeah.
beautiful. You just want to be happy and live your life. It doesn't have to be private jets. And if it is cool, but it does, it's just
Yeah,
this real
exactly. If it is cool, whatever.
humble
But
as hell,
yeah,
real.
without keeping myself held back as well.
Exactly.
It's
Yep.
a balance. But I think this conversation I had with John Demartini was just so timely and wonderful. And I basically just sent him an email, said, look, a friend of mine said you're always promoting my work. Thanks heaps. I'm glad you
Oh,
relate to my book. And he got in touch and said, let's get on Skype together and have a chat. And so we did. And he asked me a bit about my life and stuff, but I basically just pumped him full of questions, like
yeah,
business
because he's
questions.
pretty damn good at what he does.
Oh, he's brilliant. It's like,
Yeah.
how do you run your business? How do you do this? How do you do that? And he just gave it all to me freely. And,
Oh,
we
so
were on
good.
Skype for a good while and an hour or so. And it just changed the way I looked at myself. I think I've kept myself small because of my commitment to simplicity.
Yeah.
And I've had conversations with you and plenty of other really inspiring people who have helped me see that you can have all of that, and because you outsource, you get your team and you
Yeah.
get them to do the stuff, but there's a gap in between that, from when you can be in that position where you've got full operations going with your an amazing huge team. There's a transition to get there. And I don't know. I just feel like the way that John works is he only does what he wants to do now. He doesn't do accounts, he doesn't do emails, he doesn't do, and he sat down and worked it all out very statistically. How much time am I spending on this? How much is it making me? And it took him a year and a half, he said, from doing that to build his team. And he's got a team of 22. For me, wow, that feels like I don't want a team that big. But when I said that to him, he said, I don't have the team. My human resources people have that team. I have my assistant, and I have 2 or 3 other people I deal with.
Yeah, wow.
And like, he's still connected to his whole team, but he doesn't have the responsibility of,
they're not
if
his
someone
children.
quits, rehiring. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was really good for me. Even though my model and my aspirations are different, it just helped me let go of a lot of resistance to growth. And so I'm very grateful to him for his time in that, and for just, handling all my questions, which I was just,
But I will say to you, when you do the work that you do, and you created that book, and it took you a while to make that vision and to share what you learned and to write it and to pull the stories together and to be rejected 25 freaking times. If you're listening to this and you're like, someone said no to me, it's like, listen, girl or boy, yes, whoever you are, like 25 times, and then to still go off and do it. And then for them to come back on the day you're birthing Elena and this happened. I mean, I really acknowledge you, because that is the work. Like, people don't see all of that and how hard it is and how much you try and you try to build your thing. And then finally, when it comes out, we only get to see the celebration and the success and the best selling and the, sticker that says 1 million+ copies sold. And,
and the glossy cover.
Yeah, exactly. And then for him to share that with you is because you've impacted and you've done so much in your work to help globally, help people around the world. And, you only attract that because you are that back, and I know you know that, but I just think it's a beautiful kind of gift from the universe to send these amazing people that so many of the listeners and myself, look up to go, hey, bro, this is what you need to do, like, how amazing.
Yeah, exactly. And thank you.
Yeah.
And that's right. I mean, I see myself on the same level as them and him, a lot of those people sometimes, and then other times I have to grow back into it again. And that's all fine. Yeah,
I hear you. I'm like, me and Oprah are the same. I could totally help Oprah, like, of course. And then I'm like, just not a lot of people know about me yet. So it's like,
you got to do the work.
Exactly. But I think it's freaking amazing and beautiful. So what is next for you? You're in this new journey of this next book.
Yes.
What has been one of your biggest, scariest lessons with this book, and what has been one of the most incredible and amazing things that has happened so far in this?
I just love that I've created a story out of my imagination. That, and I've created a whole world. And when I'm working on that book, I feel it's very believable. And that's a buzz. That's just like, like if I have a break, I think, I wonder how they're getting on. And then it's like, oh, actually, they're only in my imagination, those people. No one else has met them yet.
I love that.
Yeah. And I do love the idea of putting out this fictional work, but I've done it more because I wanted to see if I could. It was more that I wanted to see what I was capable of with it. And I'm not sure that I want to do another book after that. Books are big projects, and they've really got to knock on my door for a long time before I let them in, and then it's like, okay, right.
Banging on there.
Because it's not just a creation, then it's the editing, and working with the publishers, and then the release, and it goes on forever. So this book probably won't hit the shelves for 2 years.
Yeah.
But it's underway. Funnily enough, the ideas of what I want to work on next go back to my photos and quotes, my nature photos and inspirational quotes, which is where it all started. And so I'm starting to put some plans in place next year on how to monetize those in a way that will be gorgeous for my audience, but also financially great for me, because I want to get out onto acreage, and I own a lovely, sweet little house here, but I grew up on 300 acres, and I don't want to go back to that area because it never rains there. But I do know an area that I want, and and I basically just miss having a country sky. I miss that openness where you see sunrise to sunset without anything in the way. And I was very blessed to grow up like that. And so the area that I want to move to is significantly expensive, and that's okay because it's making me think more creatively now. Like, okay, it's not enough just to live well off my books. It's like, okay, I need to get some products out there, but this is what I kept coming back to: make your profession what you love. And so I've been thinking about ways to do that. And yeah, I just find that photography is one of my joys, and I'm also thinking a little bit more about video photography, like nature videos. I like just I don't
That's
know.
Beautiful.
I'm going to just keep honoring my creativity, because it's the creativity that is one of my greatest joys in my work.
Yes. And that's the answer, right? It's like you honor that, you listen to that. I love making as well. I think that that's one of the things that I enjoy. And when I feel like we're very, at the time of recording this, we're in lockdown. It's been forever. Our country here is, the world's going through so much, but I feel when I live in my inner world, I feel like so free. I feel so expanded. I feel like there's space and it's a fun world, and I can make things and I can be who I want to be. And I think that's the joy of standing in your creativity. And if you're listening to this and you don't identify as someone who's creative, we don't believe you. There is creativity in you. Okay. Just, you got to tap into it.
Yes.
And like, as you hear Bronnie, it doesn't look the same for everyone. I also enjoyed taking photos in nature randomly, like taking a photo of a butterfly. And I'm like, I don't know if I'd ever show anyone that, or if I'd ever need to post it on my Instagram, but it's those moments of presence, and so one tip for someone out there who maybe is like, I don't feel so creative, I don't know how to listen to my intuition, what could you say to them if they're feeling stifled or lacking in creativity right now?
I'd probably say, well, if you didn't have to think about money or responsibility for others or anything else like that, what would you like to do with your time? And if it's just like, I just want to have a cup of tea and watch a movie, I hear you, I get that. But what if you'd done all those things? Like, what little playful things would you like to do? And it could be, I just want to spend more time cooking in the kitchen. I want to, cook the things I want to cook. That's creative. Or I wish I could spend more time in my garden. That's creative. I wish I could paint a rock, a pebble. That's creative. It doesn't have to be that obvious. But I would just say also, with the intuition and tuning into that, it's a step-by-step process. It is a relationship that you develop. And so initially, if you don't know how to follow your intuition, in my case, it told me, the way it first spoke to me was by telling me what I didn't want. And so the more you honor that, then the more it actually trusts you to say, okay, I'm being heard now, I'm going to speak louder, until it becomes your best mate. Yeah.
I love that so, so much. My friend, I love you. You are incredible and amazing. And I thank you for your existence and for the amazing work that you give to the world, and for this time, because I know you don't do heaps of interviews. So I feel very blessed. I'm like, thank you. So much gold, woman.
It's been my absolute pleasure. I love how you show up in the world. I definitely could not show up in the world the way you do. And I just love that you do, and have so much respect for you and admiration. And I know that your audience are blessed by tuning into you, and for your courage in just who you are and who you've become and who you're becoming. It's beautiful to witness and to share that ride with you. So big love back to you, and to all of you incredible listeners. I was going to say women, but I'm sure there's a couple of good fellas that are listening as well. So to everyone who's tuned in today, I honor your time, and I'm grateful to everyone who's listened to this beautiful conversation I've had.
Thank you, Bron. Where can we find you if people want to read these FAQs.
Yeah, no worries. So it's Bronnie, it's spelt the same as Bonnie, but with an R in it. Bronnie Ware, as in warehouse, like WARE, bronnieware.com. It's all there. That's my mothership. Everything you can find. There's links to everything there. I'm on Instagram and Facebook. And one of my assistants is on Pinterest for me. And
yes, we're outsourcing.
Yeah, Bronnie, I'm around. I'm there.
You're the best. Thank you so much. Everybody check the show notes. Everything will be in there. The links, the book. Can't wait to see this new book that is coming as well. Big love to you, woman.
Thank you.